Uganda has transitioned through regimes from kingdoms to slave trade by the Arabs to mental and economic captivity by the British before attaining independence on 9th of October 1962. Independence was welcomed with joy, as many thought that getting leadership from a fellow countryman was an open gateway to freedom, equal distribution of wealth, improvement in standards of living, economic development, and political stability. This, however, was short, as the country's economy has seen many changes during this time, affected by periods of political instabilities, civil wars, fluctuation of global commodity prices, and various economic reforms. The 1885 Berlin Act saw Uganda subjected to the British rule, introducing a new era of administration completely different from traditional tribal organizational leadership and new designated boundaries. As a protectorate, Uganda saw new military tactics in use of modern warfare weapons used in influencing the political affairs of the country, and since then, citizens became slaves under the masterhood of the gun. Struggles like Kabalega and Mwanga rebellions would not do much to change the status quo. 1962, however, was meant to give a different direction to the politics of the country, with fellow Ugandans in the stewardship. Political parties such as DP, UPC, KY were meant to shape the new image of the Pearl of Africa, with leaders like Kabaka Edward Mutesa, Apollo Milton Obote, Benedicto Kiwanuka, among others. This was short-lived. The 24th of May 1966 crisis saw the germination of the seed of the guns owned by the British when the Prime Minister, Obote, ordered an attack on the Lubiri to apprehend Uganda's first president, Kabaka Mutesa. The Kabaka managed to escape into exile, from where he succumbed in 1969. This was the beginning of Uganda's characterization of military kakistocracies subjected to Ugandans until today. Amin's coup d'etat in 1971, together with his toxic leadership, the UNLF and Tanzania Army confrontation to capture power on the 11th April 1979, the National Consultative Council and 60 days of Chironde Lule presidency, Lukongwa Binaisa and the demonstrations, the military commission and the first generations of 1980 have all given Uganda a terrible history, with the power of the gun being mightier. On the 6th February 1981, a 40-year-old Yoweri Museveni, together with youths from the university, took up arms and raided Kabamba Barracks on the account of 1980 elections not being free and fair.
What else can we do if you have got a government which has closed off all other channels of peaceful change? What else could we do except to surrender, to resign ourselves to slavery? And we couldn't do that as long as the people were willing. Because this is their own war. The people are actually the ones who urged us on to fight.
The 5-year-long guerrilla war left over 0.8 million Ugandans dead. The NRA captured power on January 25, 1986, and has since led a very corrupt and avaricious regime. Brutal murders and degradation of human rights has characterized the 35-year tenure of the NRM leadership, still under the rule of a gun. The promise by President Museveni of leading until 1990 was shattered with the promise of first making the 1995 Constitution, which was also shattered by the promise of organizing the men in uniform until 2000. The 2001, 2006, 2011, and 2016 general elections have all been marred with malpractice and unfairness to the opposition, and Museveni has always been declared the winner, even when there has always been substantive evidence that Dr. Besigye has won at least 2 of these encounters. So sad that the happenings of 1980 general elections have resurfaced, including gerrymandering, lack of independence of the Electoral Commission, the raid of courts by the army, suppression of dissenting voices, nepotism, and systematic corruption, all orchestrated by the junta. All that took Museveni and the group to the bush to fight against have eaten up the regime to the core. Bush war heroes became villains, grabbing land, embezzling government funds, consolidating their stay in power using the National Security Forces. The constitution that themselves created in 1995 has been continuously raped to satisfy their selfish, power-hungry motives. The term limits were scrapped in 2005 and the age limit eliminated in 2017 thanks to the fists and blows by the Presidential Protective Army to the members of parliament within the plenary. The raid to the Rwenzururu Kingdom by the army on 26th of November 2016 left many deaths, including at least 15 children, and arrests, including the cultural leader, and so the command of the raid, General Ereu, rise through the ranks. Human rights abuse in the regime need no highlighting, with the introduction of the infamous torture chambers known as safe houses, including Alfenya among others. Police and soldiers beat and detained journalists for doing their work. 33 people, including 6 parliamentarians, arrested during a by-election in Arua, faced treason charges and torture by security forces, who later were praised by the president himself, terming the torture as a proper beating.
There was a fracas in West Nile where our young friend Bobby Wine was tried to fight with security people. I think they beat him a bit. And then they came and said, oh, member of parliament was beaten. Where I said, okay, let me study how he was beaten. Now, when I studied, I found the man had been beaten properly in the right way.
A series of unsolved high-profile murders, including Assistant Superintendent of Police Felix Kawesi.
Morning of March 17, 2017, police officers in the
Muhammad Shirumira.
He gained a reputation for having a no-tolerance policy towards criminals in all areas he was posted.
When you speak, you die. When you keep quiet, you die. Better speak and die when the message has reached the people.
Ibrahim Abiriga. Major Muhammad Chigundu.
Earlier on in this place in Masanafu, it's where the murder of Sheikh Muhammad Chigundu plus his bodyguard only were able to identify as Sergeant Mukasa were murdered. Right now, police investigators are trying to do some of the final examinations of the scene to try to ascertain a few things.
Joan Kagezi, Professor Dan Mudo, Lieutenant Michael Shalita, Major General James Kazini.
There is a brief fact file about Kazini. In 1984, Kazini joined the NRA after defecting from Moses Ali's Uganda National Rescue Front. In 1987, he became commissioned officer at the rank of captain. In 1989, he was promoted to major and appointed commander of the military police. In 1991, he was promoted to lieutenant colonel and appointed commander of Masaka Mechanized Regiment to replace Colonel Kiza Besije. In 1995, he was sent to West Nile to fight General Ali Bamuze's West Nile Rescue Front. In 1996, he was promoted to colonel and given additional responsibilities in the Gulu-based 4th Division. In 1998, Kazini was deployed in Kasese to fight the ADF rebels. In 1999, he was promoted to brigadier, appointed chief of staff and commander of Safe Haven operation in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In 2000, he was recalled from the Congo. In 2001, a UN report accused him of plundering resources from the DR Congo. In December 2003, he was taken to the court-martial over embezzlement of funds. It's in the same year that he was relieved of his job on accusations of creating ghost soldiers on the army payroll. In 2009, he lost an appeal in the Constitutional Court to have him tried by civil court instead of a court-martial. Major General James Kazini died at 52.
And the long list of Muslim clerics should remind you of the mighty power of the gun I've been talking about. Fellow Ugandans, the celebration of the 58th independence should be the last one under the oppression of the gun. It's time to say no to the gun rule. It's time to take up the power. We, the people, if we come together, our power is far stronger than the people in power. The resilience and commitment of a ghetto youth, Robert Kyagulanyi, should be our call to action. We've lost many patriots in the struggle, and this should be our driving force to continue fighting to save ourselves from the rule of the gun.
Where the victors from? In the new Uganda. People power. Our power. Our power. People power. People power. Our power. Our power. People power.
Brothers and sisters in the diaspora, you must remember why you're not able to enjoy the beauty of your country. Look at yourself and remember that where you are is not where you're supposed to be. But because of the situation home, you paid your money to a certain company to bring you into slavery.
Banafe bidi abiri mugumu katonda atusindika Robert Kyagulanyi ye answer kyekyo okuddamu lye suubi lyaffe bidi abiri mugumu gwe tusuubira okuza ameefuga gaffe ag'omulundi ogusooka si okuza mundi amazaalibwa ag'omulundi 58 nga tukyakaaba nga tuli ku mawanga tukolera nga tetulina atuyamba. Bannange bidi abiri mugumu Robert Kyagulanyi lye suubi lyaffe gemaanyi gaffe gwe tutunuulidde okulaba ng'ensi yaffe enunulwa mu buwambe.
Therefore remember that it's your obligation to change the status quo by doing all that's within your means. This can be through sensitization of your people back home, mobilization of fellow diaspora Ugandans, mobilization of funds to support the people power / NUP activities back home, social media activism, etc. The independence should be a wake-up call to all of us to do what we ought to do to liberate our country from the gun power to the people power. Remember, we don't have any spare country, and people power is our power. For God and my country.
Searching from his constituency, General East.